On this episode of the Catholic Echo podcast from the Diocese of Youngstown, we're talking about Diocesan Reconfiguration with Bishop David Bonnar and Msgr John Zuraw. Find more about this episode's topic, including articles from the Catholic Echo at catholicecho.org/podcast. And now the host of the Catholic Echo podcast, Father Jim Corda.
Hello and welcome to the Catholic Echo podcast. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda. Our show is brought to you by the annual Diocesan Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and Cumulus Media Youngstown. With me again is Bishop David Bonnar. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Father Corda.
We've talked about this topic several times in our podcast. We're going to talk about it again because recently there's been many changes in the pastoral leadership of our parishes. There are more to come, and down the road there will even be more. That is the life and reality of a diocesan church, that priests are moved. We look at the pastoral needs, and you try to fill those needs. That's not an easy role for you as a diocesan bishop, and I would imagine that there are days where it's a burden sometimes. Why is it important for you to really spearhead this movement where we work together as the diocesan church to make sure that all of the needs are fulfilled?
Well, thank you, Father Corda. Again, it's always so good to be here. You know, this whole issue of reconfiguration is something that we're not alone in. I think much of the Northeast is dealing with this in the Rust Belt, just due to proliferation of church buildings, a lack of vocations, and limited resources. As a bishop, I have an obligation to meet the pastoral care needs of the faithful. I also have an obligation to meet the needs of our priests and make sure that they're not stretched too much. You know, and I also have to find a way to distribute our resources appropriately in a way that's balanced. And that's really what we've been trying to do. I came to the diocese, there was a plan in place, as you know, established by my predecessor, God rest his soul, Bishop Murray. When I came on board, I began to tweak it just a little bit, but the gist of it is that we have to live in reality. And we have to live in our moment. The church that we grew up in and formed us, the whole idea of church has changed. The whole idea of parish has changed. And, you know, we've gone from that conventional one or two priests in a parish to now partnerships, collaborations, and we've had mergers. But I'm happy to say that, you know, there's been no closures. I mean, there have been buildings that have closed. Some of those were already closed before I arrived, but they just were never formally closed or decreed. But the focus here is on community, really just trying to have a vibrant, living community that's centered in Jesus.
I'd like to go back to that word you use, and that's collaboration. That's a word that is very current in the life of the church nowadays, and in many dioceses, there's this sense of collaboration. I like to equate it with holy cooperation. Collaboration means that we work together in the spirit of holiness, cooperating with one another. It's difficult sometimes because you're talking about this parish and a second or maybe even a third or fourth parish coming together to look at your resources, to collaborate on ministries, to not duplicate those, to reach out in social concerns for the poor and the needy together. Why is it important for us as a diocesan church to cooperate graciously and gratefully with one another?
Well, it's the case where when we are together, we're stronger. The witness value, the effects of the ministry just go a long way. You know, one of the ways we do that in collaboration, I mean, I look at our annual appeal. We have people from all 6 counties of the diocese giving of themselves for the good of the church. And we see this in a more regional way, though, too, with these partnerships, with shared programs, shared staff, sharing a priest. It takes me back to my days in kindergarten when there's that old saying, everything I needed to learn in life, I learned in kindergarten. But one of the things we learned in kindergarten was the whole idea of sharing, you know, that we share. And I think that's, for me as a bishop, I'm just edified by the overwhelming sense of sharing that, you know, first it begins with our priests and our deacons, how they are sharing. I mean, they used to be in one parish, but now, you know, they're sharing their time with other communities. all for the good of the church, all so that we might all be one.
You know, it's interesting as you were talking, one of the words that immediately come to my mind is parochial. And we have really grown up with the sense of being parochial. This is my parish, my church, this is mine. And so broadening that concept of who we are as church has been difficult for many people. And I think for us to understand that collaboration means that there's respect, there's listening, there's lots of other elements that are important for us to collaborate and to cooperate together. The one thing that you had mentioned is that this has affected everybody. There's not really one parish that's standing alone. It's a cooperation with everybody. Why is that important for us as a diocese to work together with our neighboring parishes?
We're all pilgrims along the way, and we all have needs, and we all have gifts. And we're not meant to close our eyes to those needs or to hoard or withhold those gifts. So it's really all about living out our Catholic faith, which is proclaiming the joy of the gospel and being members of the body of Christ and walking this road together.
One of the terms that we use in our last few minutes of our time together is that's merger. Some people don't quite fully understand what's all involved with that, because sometimes there's a change of a name, there's more of a shared resources and personnel. Talk about merger and what exactly does that mean?
Well, merger is the coming together of two or more communities to become one new parish. And it takes time. And, recently I along with the help of our Presbyteral Council and Personnel Board, we gave a nudge because there have been parishes that have been working together, and we simply invited them, look, consider a merger. Try and do this within the year. And so that's what they're doing. So it's a matter of becoming one. And usually there's a name change to reflect the new identity. But the church buildings retain their name.
Let's go back to that name change. I'm reminded of in the Bible, oftentimes in both the Old and New Testament, we see that there's a change in a name. For example, I'm thinking of in the Old Testament, Abram and Sarai to Abraham and Sarah. In the New Testament, Saul's name was changed to Paul. So that imparts another identity. So what is that new identity that might be bigger than what we first started out with? How important is that?
It is so important, and it's so exciting because the people are invited to reflect upon what their new identity could be. And so they eventually then submit a list of names, and then in the end I choose the name for the parish based upon what they provided. And there's real excitement, and it gets them engaged in this, but it reflects the newness of what they are to become.
Bishop Bonnar, we appreciate your driving force in this plan of reconfiguration and bringing us together so that all may be one. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Did you know that the Catholic Echo magazine is delivered 10 times per year to 52,000 Catholic households in Northeast Ohio? That is more than 150,000 people. And the Catholic Echo website, catholicecho.org, has been averaging 30,000 views per month since it launched in February 2023. Advertise your business, special event, or service with the Catholic Echo in print or online. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org. Advertising discounts are available for Catholic institutions, as well as for businesses that commit to 5 or 10 issues in a year. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org or visit the advertising tab at catholicecho.org for more information.
If you have a story idea for the Catholic Echo magazine, podcast, or website, send an email to catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org. We'd love to hear your ideas.
Welcome to our show. I'm talking with Msgr John Zuraw, who is the Vicar General of the Diocese of Youngstown and very instrumental in these collaborative and mergers and also what we call reconfiguration here in the Diocese of Youngstown. So welcome to our show.
Thank you, Father Corda.
We just spent some time talking with the bishop about these proposals and these collaborative units, mergers and so forth. We're going to talk a little bit more about things that have happened in collaborative efforts here in the diocese. But before we do that, give us a little background into how we found ourselves into this point now and where this reconfiguration came about.
Right. We go all the way back to Bishop Malone. And Bishop Malone, initiated a program called Walking Together. This collaborative or merged units have taken on different names as historically we move from one point to another. We have to realize that there are three factors that invite us to consider either mergers or collaborative units. Our population base within the Diocese of Youngstown is dwindling. Second of all, the information of individuals attending Mass has decreased even further since, the pandemic of COVID. The third is the decline in number of priests and the individuals that are moving towards retirement. We're trying to move with the idea that the sacramental worship of the church would be able to continue in a most effective and a most life-giving way.
It's interesting as you were talking, one of the things that comes to mind is that we as human beings in general, but Catholics in particular, don't like change.
Correct.
And change is really part of who we are nowadays because so many things are different than they were years ago. So many things are different than they were yesterday, and things will be different tomorrow. So that whole sense of understanding that change needs to be a positive approach. And we as a diocese, I believe, have done many wonderful things to ensure that this change is positive for people and growth-filled. This collaboration that we've been talking about for a while now really has been going on in the diocese, as you had mentioned, for a long time. One collaborative effort that immediately comes to my mind is Andover and Kinsman.
Correct.
That's in Ashtabula and Trumbull. Mm-hmm. And here we have two parishes that for many years have worked together. They've had the same pastor for many years. Talk about how that collaborative effort has worked and why it needs to continue not only for those two parishes, but for other parishes.
And that has, through the demonstration of the pastor and the staff. And in all actuality, that's where it starts. Mm-hmm. That, they see a need and they want that need to be as effective as possible. Mm-hmm. The beauty of this collaborative unit then has moved to a merger. Mm-hmm. And, now they're one parish and they're a vibrant group of individuals achieving God's work, not only in Trumbull County, but in Ashtabula County. Mm-hmm. That is one of our success stories. But it started with the pastor, it started with the staff, and simply saying, do we need a multiplication of meetings, or can we become more vibrant and more stronger by being one unit?
Mm-hmm. Another one that comes to mind is in our Columbiana area. Salem and Latonia have worked for a long time together. Also, Columbiana and East Palestine has worked together. So these are collaborative efforts right in our own backyard. Right. And how important it is for people to work together. And I think that's one thing that we need to really lift up as a diocesan church, is that we're talking about communities of faith, and we are all part of that bigger community of faith as the diocese. Why is it important for us to be collaborative, first of all, in our approach to life and ministry?
We gain a better perspective when we are collaborative. Mm-hmm. It is just not our own little group or our isolated group, but when we collaborate with one another, programming becomes even stronger. In most of our parishes, they have ladies' guilds, they have men's guild, and we have seen in recent years that maybe the number has decreased due to age, due to population shift, due to family life. What we have to simply say is that if we collaborate, these groups, in fact, take on a better and stronger life. Mm-hmm. And they could achieve more things together, opposed by being distinct groups.
Also the variable that comes into play is the pastor himself, and how important it is for the pastor to have a spirit of collaboration. And I know Bishop Bonnar has used the term often, we can't be lone wolves. We can't be out there by ourselves. We have to work together, not only with our parish staff, but with other local parishes and staff and pastors. What can the pastor do to benefit themselves to be more collaborative and to share that spirit?
First and foremost, there has to be an openness. You and I were not trained in a spirit of collaboration. When we were ordained for a particular diocese. Within that particular diocese, there were particular churches. The gentlemen that are preparing for priesthood now see the importance of this collaborative nature. And in all honesty, it's not new, because the Vatican Council is all about collaboration and how we work together and, how we achieve greatness, because there is a common goal there, instead of a particular goal or a goal that maybe is centered only on a specific group or specific area. So this whole concept of collaboration is what the church is calling us to do. It's not foreign, but we place obstacles that hinder collaboration instead of let collaboration excel. We still want our own comfortable zone. And collaboration invites us to look beyond navel gazing and say, this is for the body of Christ, not just for my own needs or wants.
What are some of those areas that parishes have in the past and now in the present collaborate with?
First and foremost, parishes now are collaborating with the Order of Christian Initiation for adults. We realize that the number of those individuals who are coming into the church through the Easter sacraments, they're not as high as they once were, where there might be classes of 30 to 40 individuals. Now you might have a class of 5 or 6. The Order of Christian Initiation for adults centers on that adult faith formation model. So the more that gather together, the more that we can collaborate with our neighboring parishes for the instructional or catechetical or faith element, that is going to be an element of enrichment. Another area is youth ministry. Individual students are going to school together. So why not have our programming of youth ministry shared amongst a certain geographical group?
Well, we're going to talk more about that in a moment, but we need to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Did you know that the Catholic Echo magazine is delivered 10 times per year to 52,000 Catholic households in northeastern Ohio? That's more than 150,000 people. And the Catholic Echo website, catholicecho.org, has been averaging 30,000 views per month since it launched in February 2023. Advertise your business, special event, or service with the Catholic Echo in print or online. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org. Advertising discounts are available for Catholic institutions as well as for businesses that commit to 5 or 10 issues in a year. Email catholicecho@youngstowndiocese.org or visit the advertising tab at catholicecho.org for more information.
Wondering what happened to timely Catholic news in the Diocese of Youngstown? It's at catholicecho.org. There you'll find recent stories about Catholic life in all 6 counties of the Diocese of Youngstown, plus recent videos, podcasts, and even national and global news. You'll find it all at catholicecho.org. Sign up for the email newsletter while you're there to have Catholic news delivered to your inbox.
Welcome back to our show. I'm talking with Msgr John Zuraw, who is the Vicar General for the diocese and very instrumental in moving along this reconfiguration plan. We talked about collaboration and how important that spirit is for us as a diocesan church. I'd like to talk about what we call mergers. Explain that term and what that's all about.
Throughout society, we hear that word merger. Banks merge, department stores merge, other material groupings merge. And the aspect of merger is to make stronger. It is to make better. So we talk a little bit about our parishes merging. And the merger concept is not to eliminate, but rather to enhance and make stronger. We realize that at times mergers within our churches will result with a closure of a building or so. But in most cases, and especially what we are working now within the diocesan grouping, is that individual buildings will remain open, but the merger will be that of a more effective merger with parish councils, finance councils, developing a more stronger and vibrant group.
Let's talk about the priest, because oftentimes the priest, for lack of a better word, takes the brunt of a lot of that when they have 2 or 3 or in some cases 4 parishes to administer. So that really must facilitate the life of the priest, but also in such a way that the burdens are not as onerous on him. To have a priest or a pastor who has 3 or 4 parishes that has to go to multiple meetings in a week and doesn't really have time to do what he needs to do for himself is something that we as a diocesan church need to be aware of, especially in light of the fewer priests that we have. So what is the diocese doing to help our priests to handle these additional administrative responsibilities?
And one aspect, Father Corda, is through the idea of merging these units. We realize that the priest doesn't have to do it all by himself. Even though he is the spiritual leader, he is the guiding force of each of these churches and parishes. The multiplication of meetings, the multiplication of various programming is diminished when there is so much going on that you cannot give the attention necessary. With mergers, there is a unified force, and with that unified force, great things can happen.
We know that the mergers that are going to affect our diocese really encompass almost all of the 6 counties. So there's not one county that's just set aside that's going to remain the same, but almost every county is going to experience this sense of a merger. Let's talk about what's happening up in Ashtabula County. There's been collaboration over the years in those parishes. There's also been mergers over recent years. Why is it important to bring those parishes together to work together, especially in that area?
The proposed Ashtabula Deanery with Orwell and Raw Creek represents a community that has already collaborated. And the next step is the merger. They share a common priest. The programming is common. The normal occurrence is that we would move to a more vibrant community within the Ashtabula Deanery for this merger to occur. The priest and the staff have prepared the people already that this is the next step for the wherewithal of these 2 communities.
And we know that there are several communities in our own county, in Mahoning County, that's going to be affected and also going to enter into this spirit of merging. Talk about briefly some of that.
Right. So with Austintown area, Immaculate Heart of Mary, and St. Joseph's. Once again, they share a pastor. This gives them an opportunity through this merger to be one unit. And with being a one-unit parish, they will remain, 2 separate campuses, but a lot of the day-to-day operations will be handled with a central office. Boardman, St. Charles, and St. Luke, for many years, they have been sharing a priest. And they do have a diocesan pastoral associate at St. Luke. This will enhance even the strength of the staff of St. Charles through the working of Sister Mary Alice Colville. We look at the geographical areas of St. Columba, St. Edwards, and Holy Apostles. Geographically, they are close in proximity. The beauty of that merger is that individuals do not live, in most cases, in the neighborhood any longer, but they do travel. And the strength of this merger with the Cathedral Parish, St. Edwards, and Holy Apostles allows this merger to maintain the viability of individuals coming into the city and allowing the presence of the Catholic community to continue even more vibrant and with strength. Each of these communities has something to offer, either through ethnic heritage or through other traditions. The beauty of this is that we are allowing the community to share their very best and to strengthen their very best.
What would you like to tell the folks that are with us about things, for example, like buildings? I've talked to the bishop about this in our earlier segment. It's not always about buildings. Certainly we have to care for them, and they are special to us. But it's not always about a building. What is it always about?
It's about spreading the gospel, okay? The building is an agent, but it is not the end-all, be-all. And sometimes what happens is that as families move from one house to another, they experience a newness, they experience a vibrancy. And I think at times, we have become so accustomed that it is the building instead of what is happening in the building that now we have to center our attention. With each and every one of these mergers that will be coming forward within the year, we're encouraging all of our parishes, once again, discover what your strengths are. What are your weaknesses? What's the threat to the merger? But more importantly, name the opportunity. You'll see that the strengths outweigh the weaknesses, the opportunities outweigh the threats.
And this process is an ongoing effort in our diocesan church to maintain worship spaces, to maintain vibrant communities, and also to encourage the faithful to pray for those who minister in parishes, to pray especially for priests and for more vocations to the priesthood. So, Monsignor Zuraw, thank you for your presence today.
Thank you.
For more information, you can go to catholicecho.org. The Catholic Echo podcast is a production of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Youngstown in cooperation with Cumulus Media Youngstown. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda. Have a blessed day, and may God be with you.